Won another lawsuit against a guy who tried to force me out of business because I broke his local monopoly. This is a follow-up to a post I made last year. TLDR of the original post. Last year I opened a liquor store with my girlfriend, now fiancé, in my hometown. The nearby city had a few liquor stores run by a city councilman who controls who gets liquor licenses in said city. With me being 40 minutes away, he was losing business and offered to buy my store. I refused, and instead, he tried to sue me for libel. Is attempted for around half a year, continued to sue me, my business, or anything else he could until it was thrown out with contempt. Fortunately, I was able to get my lawyer to take the case, pro bono, so I didn't get buried in legal fees as the guy intended. My lawyer and I then began to file suit against the guy. So that's where we left off a while ago. As of now, the case is over and I can talk about it. So, to first explain why I didn't post any updates previously. When I filed the lawsuit, my lawyer was not to post anything about it online. I don't think that this had anything to do with the original post. But what he told me was that if the opposing counsel found a post and was able to link it back to me, they could argue that I was only filing a suit to gain online clout. But now the court case is over, so I can now talk to you guys. We filed the complaint about a month after the last case against me was dismissed. What we filed for was multiple accounts of malicious misuse of due process. After filing the complaint, we needed to serve the papers to the guy. Someone, I don't know who, must have told him, because he dodged getting served for multiple weeks. The only reason the process server was able to serve him was because there was a meeting to approve the transfer of a liquor license between two businesses in the city. Ironic. He and his lawyers answered the complaint and said everything in the complaint and the summons was a deliberate misrepresentation of the facts. None of the suits filed against me were in any way malicious, but given that the only thing that changed between most of the suits was the named defendant, kind of disproves that. He then went on to say that this current suit was simply a move by me to get revenge on him for trying to protect his business. Pretty much the entire answer was just him saying, "No, you." After that we moved into discovery, which I will talk about in a minute. Through the discovery process, there were a couple of motions for dismissal by the defendant's counsel. The first was just a general, "All the facts are wrong, and this is a lawsuit filed in bad faith." This was immediately thrown out by the judge because the 4 suits filed back to back with only the defendant being changed indicate that this was potentially a malicious lawsuit. The second motion was that these weren't malicious because the defendants were different. Effectively, the argument is that if the same defendant, then it would be a malicious suit. But because the defendant kept getting changed from suit to suit, that means that there was a legitimate complaint that they were trying to get solved, which, technically, would be legal and I would have no standing. However, the judge acknowledged that while the argument is legally sound, if you simply look at the wording of the law, it completely violates the spirit that it was written in. And the actions of the defendant only serve to confirm that the previous lawsuits were filed in bad faith. So, then the motion was tossed out of court. Later during discovery, the defendant filed for a venue change. Seems how we filed in my local court, they argued that the local jury would be biased towards me. This was dismissed because they forgot to ask for a jury trial. We were perfectly fine with proceeding with a bench trial, so we didn't ask for a jury. The judge decided then that because they didn't request a jury, a venue change would not offer any significant change in the trial. They used the decision, and some history I have with the same judge, to appeal to the state court to dismiss the case. They refused, so back to discovery. The whole process was extremely slow, and we were still in the middle of discovery when we decided to settle. We had received multiple settlement offers up to that point and rejected all of them. But at the end of November, the defendant decided to fire the manager of one of his businesses. The former manager then decided to turn over some text messages to the court. You see, we requested all communications about the malicious filings from last year that the defendant had made. That included text messages that showed neither counsel nor the defendant did the proper diligence to comply with discovery. The defense was able to get that text removed from the evidence. While the text might not have been able to be used as evidence if had we proceeded to trial, you can't erase that you hid evidence from the judge's memory. They don't tend to take that well. With this coming to light, and the chicanery that the defendant had been pulling, the judge was just over it at this point. Our lawyers had to meet with the judge at the very beginning of this month, December, where the defense's counsel was reprimanded. After this, the defendant offered a really big settlement. After my fiancé and I discussed it, we decided to accept the offer. Our wedding is getting close, and frankly, we don't want to deal with court stuff anymore. The whole trial process was still months away, and there wasn't any guarantee that we would have gotten any more money. Unfortunately, it's not the nuclear revenge I and my fiancé and possibly you were hoping for. Although the settlement, after I settled the contingency pay for my lawyer, did repay the remainder of my loan, we will have a nice chunk of money left over. Original post. I am 26 years old, and I decided to open my own business this year. Moving forward in this post, I should point out that I am from a small town 1,000 people in the rural Midwest. Because of this, everyone has some sort of connection with someone. We went to one of the liquor stores in the closest city 30-ish minutes away, small city 8,000 people. When we were grabbing some alcohol for a party, I was looking at the prices and saw how insane the prices were. For a 6-pack of a local beer, we were charged $15. I was thinking about this and figured that I could probably make bank opening a liquor store. Back in February, I was furious about my trashy job and thinking out loud how cool it would be to own my own business to a friend. My friend's mom happened to be the president of the local bank. He told me, hey, with the pandemic, the bank has been struggling to find customers to give out loans. Right now, the bank is giving loans for cheap. A couple of weeks later, I went in and met with my friend's mom and pitched my idea with the research I had done on alcohol prices, potential demand, and estimated income. I got the loan at a fantastic interest rate. I bought a building, which happened to be the former bank, and hired my dad to help me renovate the building. My dad is a general contractor, and he gave me an excellent quote on materials and labor. After working everything out with the distributors, getting the proper licenses, and getting my paperwork I needed for the government, I was ready to open my liquor store in May. I had started taking out ads in the local newspaper advertising my store and my prices. When I was in talks with my distributors, I learned, even with inflation and everything else, the liquor stores in the city had like an 80% markup. I talked to a local business owner, and he suggested that I have around a 35% to 40% markup. Because of this, I was significantly cheaper than the closest liquor store and had a much wider selection than the gas stations and small local stores nearby. My hometown is near a national forest. As such, we have a ton of people who come up for weekends for recreational activities year-round. My first week, the week before Memorial Weekend after opening, I had made a $4,000 profit. It was great being my own boss. If someone was rude to me or my girlfriend, oh, I'm sorry, you can do your business elsewhere. If someone tells my girlfriend go back to China, you chink be. They can pay me 15% more at the register. Did the gang and I run out of alcohol? Time to grab my keys. Not car keys, the store keys. My apartment is like 2 blocks away and go to the store. That's not to say that it wasn't difficult running my own business, especially that my only employee was my girlfriend. And we were both working 6 or 7 10 to 12-hour days a week. I was both manager, accountant, and cashier, but fuck, it's so much nicer knowing I can tell someone to pound sand for being a prick. Couple of weeks after Memorial Day, some old guy walks into my store a couple of minutes after I opened. He seemed friendly enough, but eventually he offered to buy my store. I'm not going to say the amount, but it wouldn't have even covered my principal on the loan. I rejected the proposal outright and refused to negotiate the sum higher. He walked out of my store saying, "Welp, you'll be sorry you rejected that offer." The next month, a guy walked into my store and asked if I was the owner. After saying yes, I was informed that my business was being sued by this random guy I never heard of for libel. After he left, I was freaking out and I decided that I was going to close early. When I got home, I googled the guy and soon saw a picture of the guy that tried to buy my store. It turns out that that is the guy who owns both of the liquor stores in the nearby city. It also just so happens that he is on city council. With a little bit of further digging, I learned that this city has an ordinance that reads, "Any business institution that does not fulfill the definition of a restaurant, tavern, or liquor dispensary will be excluded from obtaining a license for the sale of alcohol." Later I discovered that the same guy happens to be the head of the board which approves liquor licenses. I love small-town corruption. Either way, I had a major issue. My maternal uncle happens to be a lawyer in a neighboring state. I decided to call him and try to get some legal advice. I talked to him and read the documents that I had been handed, served over the phone, and the research I had done. After receiving all of the information I had read off, I was expecting to get some sort of advice, but instead heard, "Hang on, I got to make a call." And he hung up. I'm freaking out. I was actually about to post my first post to our legal advice. I'll be honest, I just wanted someone to tell me it was going to be okay, and I didn't need to crawl to this guy on my hands and knees. As I was writing the title, my uncle called back. "Hey Opus, I just got off the phone with my partner. He agreed that we can take your case pro bono. If you would like to accept, we can discuss at my office tomorrow at 1 o'clock. This is how I learned that my uncle is on the bar in 3 states. So, we meet, and we discuss the case. It turns out that the guy filed the libel suit against my business based on the ads I took out in the local newspapers. He claimed that my ads were targeted to damage his and his business's reputation. There were a few other things that I had no idea what was being referenced, but Uncle assured me that we would win this case no problem. 3 weeks later the case is dismissed, but after my uncle says people like that piece of work will likely try to file another suit against you. If that happens, call me and promise I will help. The next day I get served again, but this time I am the defendant. Not my store, me. I swear to God I look at the documentation and the only thing that changed was instead of my business's name mine is listed as the defendant. Same thing happens. 4 weeks later the case is dismissed. Over the next 3 months I was sued just as many times. Before the 5th case's hearing we had a settlement meeting. My uncle, the judge, the guy suing me, his lawyer, a bailiff, and I were sitting in this room. Judge says, "You two have been in court 4 times already. Is there any way we could come to an agreement that'll stop this cycle of faulty litigation?" The guy's lawyer says they have an offer and hand it to my uncle, who then hands it to me. It essentially read that he'll stop all litigation if I sell my business for about 30% of remaining loan principal. I outright rejected the offer and made a counteroffer. I said, "If you drop this case, I won't sue your butt for harassment." He busts out laughing, "Sue me? With what money? The legal fees alone ought to have drained you. You should be happy I chose to extend this offer and not sue your butt into bankruptcy and buy that shithole from the bank when they foreclose on your dumb butt." The judge, the bailiff, and the guy's own lawyer were all looking at him aghast for saying the silent part out loud about the real reason I was getting sued. My uncle straight out said to him, "Oh, I am sorry, apparently you were never told. I have taken all of my nephew's cases pro bono. The only money he has spent on your litigations is gas. And bluntly, sir, I think your outburst has just ensured a suit against you." After that we just left, and I was then informed a few days later the litigation was dropped. Right now, my uncle and I are talking about the future suit against the guy. I want to sue the guy for a very high amount to try and get press attention on this guy and his sketchy actions. Although my uncle warned me that we'll need to be careful because if we set the damages too high it'll look like we're just being vindictive. This suit won't be pro bono, but after getting sued 5 times for free essentially, I am not going to complain. Looking back on this, I am so thankful that my friends and family supported the entire way, especially my uncle. Without my uncle I would have absolutely lost my business. Sorry, but this isn't an update on my lawsuit. Although my uncle came into the store today and informed me unofficially that if I choose to continue with the lawsuit his firm will take the case on a 25% contingency.